Live.
Welcome, everybody, back to Dramatis Personae, where our prime directive is be gay, do crimes. We are the internet's only LGBTQ positive Star Trek dramatic read along show streaming on Facebook Live and on Twitch. Every 2 weeks, we do a reenactment of a favorite or specifically loathed in the case of co-genitor Patu, episode of all the different Star Trek series, and then we follow it with a rigorous discussion of the episode we just did, usually through a class-conscious, queer, gender and sexuality dissective viewpoint. I am Angel Castillo. I am your host, and during this episode, we are going to reenact the first season Star Trek Voyager episode, Prime Factors. I will be playing two parts. I will be playing Neelix, the ineffable, incorrigible ship's chef. That's a tongue twister, as well as a random ensign. But now I want to throw it over to our wonderful Dramatis Personae repertory players. I'll introduce them by name and they'll tell you who they are playing. First off, I want to introduce Casey Lowry.
Hello, I'll be playing Belana Torres.
All right, next is Paul Bloomer.
Hello, I will be playing the nefarious Seska.
Maxim Rex.
Hi there, I'm playing Ensign Kim.
Excellent. Noah Stansbury.
Hello, I will be playing Tom Paris today.
Bex Flat.
Hello, I will be playing Captain Catherine Janeway.
Salute. Steffi.
I will be playing Lieutenant Tuvok, and I will also be playing the harp in an unconventional manner.
Right. Some assembly required for Steffi's performance. Next up, we got Kirsten Johnson.
Chakotay.
You'll notice our makeup budget has increased this season on Dramatis Personae. JB Flat.
Hello, I will be playing Gath.
Wardrobe for Mr. Flat provided by Hugh Hefner. That's my name. Robbie Lawton.
Hi there. I'll be playing Kess and also the Sicarian Jarrett.
Right. Next, we've got Lita Crispin.
Hello, I will be playing the Sicarian Udana.
Excellent. Oh, wait. I'm reading off a list, guys. Remember, this is an all-volunteer production. We try to be proud of our production values, but I'm reading off a list. Sorry to peek behind the curtain there. Randall C. Brown, why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, hello, hi. I am playing Lieutenant Joseph Carey.
All right. And then reading the stage directions, guiding the narrative of this wonderful journey is David X. Crow. Say hi.
Hey, y'all, I will try not to corpse this week.
Yes. We embrace the impromptu nature. This is live. Speaking of live, so I want to let you know that we are broadcasting live every 2 weeks on Facebook Live and on Twitch, and you might notice, depending on which platform you're viewing, I don't know if it's visible on both platforms, but you might know somewhere, you might notice an overlay for an app called Tiltify, which we are using to raise money for the Transgender Law Center. We will be doing little, between the act breaks, I'll give you some reminders to contribute. But just to let you know about Transgender Law Center, if you don't already know about it, Transgender Law Center is the largest national trans-led organization advocating for a world in which all people are free to define themselves and their futures grounded in legal expertise and committed to racial justice. So in a moment right now where we are experiencing so much assault on marginalized people, both in the legislative arenas and also just on the street, it is so important for us to support organizations that take this very specifically intersectional approach to liberation. And Transgender Law Center is just one of those great organizations that understands that you cannot silo off different forms of oppression. And so they do center transgender experience, but they know that they have to work at the intersections of race and class among all of those struggles. So yeah, especially if you're somebody like me, who is working from home during quarantine and doesn't need the stimulus check, I try, I do a lot of other organizing work, but one of the things I try to do is also, move the money that I'm not spending right now because I'm spending so much time at home to good causes that need the financial support. TLC, absolutely one of them. So without further ado, I would like to throw it over to the wonderful buttery voice of David X. Crow as we begin Dramatis Personae's journey to prime factors. Take it away, DXC.
We open on Tori's openly ogling a man who has just collected a school dinner tray from the counter. She turns back to see Seska looking at her.
What?
I've seen that look before. Ensign Murphy had better watch out.
I happen to know that Murphy is seeing one of the Delaney sisters.
Not since Harry and Tom Paris made their move.
Harry and the Delaney sisters? He would have told me.
I guess there are some things he keeps to himself.
Harry, is it true about you and the Delaney sisters?
Is what true?
Come on, Harry. There aren't any secrets on this ship, on a ship this small.
What have you been telling people?
Well, we did take that trip to Venice with them.
The holodeck? You've got to be kidding. That lasted all of 15 minutes.
Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you, what happened when you and Jenny Delaney disappeared into that gondola?
Nothing.
Harry, we're friends. You can tell us.
Nothing. We talked and then I fell over the side.
You fell out of the gondola.
I think maybe Harry wasn't quite prepared for how voracious Jenny Delaney can be.
Everyone laughs at Kim, the eternal butt of sexual jokes. Our focus shifts to Janeway and Tuvok sitting at a nearby table who overhear them.
I think it's finally beginning to happen.
Tuvok looks puzzled.
Both crews getting along.
That kind of bonding should improve performance and maximize efficiency.
Yes, I'm sure it will.
A comm signal sounds.
Bridge to Captain Janeway.
Go ahead.
Captain, we're receiving a distress call in one of the lower subspace bands.
I'm on my way.
Janeway, Tuvok, Paris, and Kim walk into a bustling bridge.
Report, Commander.
The subspace distress signal is coming from a vessel bearing 125 Mark 21. Distance, 200,000 kilometers.
Captain, sensors indicate 5 life forms aboard.
The vessel is altering its course to intercept us.
Go to yellow alert and slow to impulse. Hail them, Mr. Kim.
Aye, Captain.
The image of a human-looking person appears on the view screen, who has chosen to weave a number of old-style television loop aerials into his bum.
This is Catherine Janeway of the Federation Starship Voyager. What is the nature of your emergency?
We have no emergency.
But you're sending out a distress call.
Yes, we are.
Why?
Because you are in distress.
And as Captain Janeway turns to roll her eyes at Chakotay, we end the teaser. As a ship comes alongside
Yes.
Voyager, the person on the view screen continues.
I am Gatharel Lavin of the planet Sikaris. Let me welcome you into our system, show you the hospitality of our people.
That's very kind of you.
If I could come aboard your ship, I have gifts for you, and a proposal I hope you will find irresistible.
Mr. Tuvok, make the necessary arrangements to receive our guests.
Neelix and Kess are in the galley. Neelix is licking his fingers whilst preparing food when Janeway and Gath enter, followed by Tuvok.
Mr. Labin, it really isn't necessary to go all this trouble.
Please, call me Gath. And I promise you I would like nothing better than to prepare a few of our newest delicacies for you. Ah, this will be perfect.
Captain, I'm serving lunch in less than 2 hours.
Gath takes dishes from a bag he was carrying.
We won't be long, Neelix. This is Mr. This is Gath. He's from Sikaris.
Sikaris?
Do you know about the planet?
Only stories about their incredible hospitality.
Tell me, how do you know about us?
Our people are very well traveled. Some of them have brought back stories about the ship of aliens from another part of the galaxy. People lost and alone, struggling to find their way home again.
Janeway, Neelix, and Kess sample Gath's food, which definitely aren't figs.
This is wonderful.
And I decided to come and meet you and offer you respite.
Respite?
A vacation, if you will. Get away from the confines of the ship. Enjoy the beauty of our landscape. Meet and talk with interesting, learned people.
And the crew would certainly welcome a little shore leave, Captain.
And I hear the Sicarians have a huge variety of edible plants. If we could collect some seeds, we'd expand our selection significantly.
Sounds like all this would increase performance and maximize efficiency. Don't you think, Mr. Tuvok?
Indeed.
Well, Gath, looks like you're getting visitors. We'll set a course and follow you in.
I could not be happier.
With Voyager in orbit, the crew are on Sikaris, in an open and light plaza with lots of steps and a patterned tiled floor. Birds are singing. Gath and Janeway approach some small shopping stalls.
If you see anything you like, just let me know.
What is this material? So delicate.
Exquisite, isn't it? It's the latest import from Vedestrius. It's spun from the petals of a flower that blooms only in moonlight. Shall I have a dress made for you?
It's lovely, but no, thank you.
Is it so hard for you to accept a gift?
All right, but something small. Maybe a scarf?
What a curious people you are. Tell me, would it help if I said that you could have an entire wardrobe made from these beautiful fabrics, and that it would give all of us pleasure to create it for you?
Let's start with the scarf.
As you like. Which cloth do you prefer?
Janeway starts perusing the cloths again. Elsewhere on the plaza, Kim has found a young woman waving a Vibrolux 5000 over what looks like a minimalist harp.
That's beautiful. Are you a musician?
This isn't a musical instrument. It's an atmospheric sensor. The frequency of the chimes indicates changes in their conditions.
Then it must work on a principle of nonlinear resonance, adjusting to the dynamic variables in the atmosphere.
That's exactly right. You're a scientist.
In a sense. Can you show me how to operate it?
I'm happy to. First, you have to initialize the subharmonic mode.
Udana hands the dildo to Kim and he moves it around the struts and wires of the weather station. Back at the shopping stall, Janeway selects a blue pattern fabric.
Oh, I think this one.
When I see you wearing that scarf, my pleasure will be greater than yours.
Well, I should get back. But with your permission, I'd like to start organizing teams to gather plants and seeds.
This is my associate, Jarrett Hotel. You may contact him to make any necessary arrangements.
We'll be glad to assist you in any way, Captain.
I'll find my officers and we'll return to the ship.
Tonight we are having a celebration here. I hope you and your officers will be my guests.
We'd be delighted.
And as Gath smiles creepily at the departing Captain Janeway, it's the end of Act 2.
Alrighty. We have already discovered the horny in this episode. It's very buried deep. So I just want to take this act break to remind people about the organization that we are raising funds for through Tiltify, and I believe through Facebook as well. I mean, you'll see links either in the comments or in the chat somewhere about how to contribute to Transgender Law Center. I want to read from their website the What We Believe bullet points, just to once again show how wonderful this organization is. Transgender and gender nonconforming people hold the resilience, brilliance, and power to transform society at its root. Point, no one is disposable. Point, the people most impacted by the systems we fight must lead the work. Point, until trans and gender nonconforming migrants and Black trans women are safe and free, none of us are. Point, liberation for everyone is both necessary and possible. Point, self-determination is a right we are all born to realize. Point, our survival is revolutionary. Point, because of those who came before us, we have already won. Hell yeah. I know it's easy to see a name like Transgender Law Center and think that it's just some kind of very milquetoast liberal thing just devoted to electoral campaigns. But I mean, they do. I mean, obviously, knowledge of the law and being able to fight battles on in the legislative venue are very important. But it has to be informed with this radical lens. So again, if you got some money, if you want to chip in a few bucks, go to our Tiltify link or whatever other links will appear in the chat from our crew, posted by our crew. It's Transgender Law Center really doing the work that needs to be done right now. And with that, I return you to Prime Factors Act 2.
Thank you, Comrade Angel. Voyager orbits a lush-looking blue and green planet.
Captain's log recording.
Captain's log, stardate 48642.5. The crew is enjoying an evening on Sikaris. They are discovering, to their delight, that reports of this species' hospitality has not been exaggerated.
Back on the planetside plaza, Kim is out of uniform, reclining on cushions and talking with Udana.
So the whole thing exploded, and there we were, 70,000 light years from home, and no way to get back. It felt pretty lonely.
That's a very noble story.
Noble?
Stories can be whimsical or frightening or melancholy or many other things, but noble stories are the ones that most affect our lives.
Udana starts caressing Kim's arm.
May I have your permission to tell us this story?
Sure, it's no secret.
But stories are an essential part of a person's being. I would never share without permission.
Go right ahead. I've got a few others too.
You do? Come with me. I know a private place where you can tell me all your stories.
Udana takes Kim to a raised circular dais, which is lit from below.
It's close to me. Alas.
Udana and Kim disappear in a rush of white photons. They reappear a few seconds later in a dark, densely forested area.
Where are we?
The woods of Astria, my favorite place. I usually come here when I want to spend time alone, but tonight seemed right to bring you. Now to your stories, all of them.
Why is it so much warmer here?
A breeze starts up.
What is that?
The dawn zephyr.
Dawn? We just got here.
The wind picks up.
That's an amazing feeling. What's happening?
The Eroscene winds, passion winds, come just before dawn. The Eroscene creates euphoria.
I'll say.
Yadana turns from the bright dawn and puts her arms around Harry's neck. She caresses the side of his face.
Why am I seeing two suns?
Because this is a binary system.
But your planet only has one sun.
But Alastria's too.
Harry gently removes Yadana's hands from his shoulders.
Udana, where are we?
I get you. Alastria, a system from Sikaris.
How far?
Do you have to ask all these questions?
Please? It's important.
Alastria is about 2.5 billion times the distance between Sikaris and its sun.
That's almost 40,000 light years.
The euphoric Yadana cuddles up to a distracted Kim.
Now, feel breeze.
We have to go back.
It's still night on Sikaris. We have plenty of time.
No, we're going back, and I need you to tell me everything you know about that platform that got us here.
Back on the plaza, Janeway and Gath are reclining together on a couch.
And tomorrow night, you must let me take you to the theater.
Oh my, I've lost all track of time. My crew is gone. I'm the last one here.
I hope that's because you are enjoying yourself.
I am.
Gath slowly moves in for a kiss.
Captain! Excuse me for interrupting, but I've just found out about something incredible.
Calm down, Ensign. What is it?
That platform. It's a transportation device. Extremely sophisticated. It operates on the principle of folding space.
That's something that's been theorized, but no one's ever been able to develop the technology.
Gath looks smug and creepy.
Well, these people have. I've just been to Alastria and back. Alastria is 40,000 light years away.
We call it a spatial trajector. We are able to travel to all the planets in this quadrant.
How far can it take you?
Alastria is at the uttermost limits of its range.
Apparently, it's never been used to move anything as large as Voyager, but as I understand the principle of space folding, the size of the object isn't relevant.
What do you think? Would it be possible to modify your technology so we could use it?
Gath looks disappointedly up at Eudora.
I tried to tell him.
What is it?
We cannot share our technology. Once it is out of our control, it might fall into the hands of those who would abuse it. And our canon of laws strictly forbids that.
But we wouldn't abuse it. Don't you see what it would mean to us?
Please, don't make it more difficult for me. I don't enjoy denying you this, but our canon of laws has determined our entire system of values. To break one of its precepts would undermine everything we believe in. I'm sorry, but there can be no exceptions to the law.
Janeway looks down and then up at Kim, both of them looking disappointed and frustrated. And that's the end of Act 2.
What's going to happen here once there's finally friction in this budding relationship? Again, taking this moment to say a word for the cause, that the organization that we're raising for money for during this broadcast, Transgender Law Center. I want to talk about some of the work that it's involved with. There is an article on their website that talks about how Transgender Law Center is part of the Health Not Prisons Collective, which is a new 3-year national initiative of longtime collaborators led by and accountable to communities most affected by HIV criminalization in the United States, including the Counter Narrative Project, the Positive Women's Project, the Positive Women's Network, Zero Project, Transgender Law Center, and the U.S. Caucus of People Living with HIV. Collectively and with steadfast allies, the founders of the collective have pushed criminalization to the forefront of the HIV policy agenda. Now, in the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, the collective will build the power of the intersectional national HIV movement led by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, women, LGBT people, and transgender and gender nonconforming people to refocus our efforts instead of blame, punishment, and the denial of basic needs. So if you support work that goes towards transformative justice, transformational notions of justice, throw some money on Tiltify or via Facebook. Look for the links in the chat and the comments. You know, we love Star Trek because we love that aspirational vision of a future where we all find joy in people's differences more than fear. And this is the kind of work that we need to support to make that kind of vision possible. And with that, we now move on to Act 3 of Prime Factors.
Back on Voyager, in the briefing room, Kim is ranting.
I can't believe they're not going to help us. Some kind of hospitality.
40,000 light years. Even if that's as far as we could go, it would still knock about 4 decades off of our trip.
And the possibility exists that we could reconfigure the Matrix at that point to take us another 30,000 light years, right into Federation space.
Since they've already said no, this kind of thinking is only going to make you feel worse.
It's the first time we've been on the other side of the fence.
What fence?
The one that's made of binding principles. We have our own set of rules, which includes the Prime Directive. How many times have we been in the position of refusing to interfere when some kind of disaster threatened an alien culture? It's all very well to say we do it on the basis of enlightened principle. But how does that feel to the aliens? I'm sure many of them think the Prime Directive is a lousy idea.
Even we think so sometimes.
I know of many times when Starfleet personnel have decided on strong ethical grounds to ignore it.
Still, there's a reason why it's Starfleet's General Order Number 1. On the whole, it does a lot more good than harm.
Captain, it occurs to me that we know little about the Sicarians. We cannot assume their first refusal is unalterable. It may be that no is simply a prelude to negotiation.
He's right. Maybe they can be reasoned with.
Maybe they want something. Maybe they'll bargain.
What do we have to offer? They seem to have everything they need.
There's a long pause as Janeway stares meaningfully out into deep space.
Stories. Stories are an important part of their culture. They seem to provide more than entertainment. They're kind of a measuring rod of values and beliefs. We have a huge library in our databanks. We could offer them the whole thing. All the great literature of dozens of cultures.
What do you think, Captain? Would they be interested?
They just might be. From what we've seen of them, they're a remarkably pleasure-oriented people. They might appreciate a gift of literature. I'll arrange to meet with Gath. As magistrate, he has the authority to make this decision.
In the meantime, I'm going to take a look at that trajector platform. Maybe I can figure out how it works.
You'll do nothing of the sort, Lieutenant. If I find this law is negotiable, I'll make every attempt to get the technology. But until then, we won't do anything that might violate their canon of laws as we understand it. That's all.
The briefing ends and everyone leaves except Torres and Kim, who is looking deep into space.
What's wrong?
I just hope she gets it.
She will.
In her quarters, Janeway is entertaining Gath with a slice of pie, which is almost as erotic as aromatic blue-veined cheese.
Exquisite. What did you say you call it?
Pecan pie.
I must have the recipe.
I'd be happy to share it with you. Gath, I want you to know I understand your reluctance to share your technology with us. We have similar restrictions. But I wondered, would it make any difference if I gave you my word that we would destroy the trajector matrix as soon as we used it?
I know this will upset you, but I can't.
I understand. And frankly, I suspected as much. But I have a proposal which might allow you to obey your laws and still give us what we want. Surely you could use the trajector to send us. 40,000 light years would mean a great deal to us. And in return, we'd be prepared to offer you something you might enjoy.
Oh?
A full library of the Federation's finest literature.
Literature?
Centuries of stories. New stories from diverse cultures. Stories that fire the imagination.
You certainly know how to tempt me, Captain.
Gath reaches up and touches Janeway's chin.
It's certainly possible. I'll have to meet with the other magistrates to discuss it. No one has ever made a request like that. In the meantime, I'd like to enjoy every bite of this, how did you call it?
Pecan pie.
Down in engineering, Torres is working hard and Seska is staring at the warp core in deep contemplation.
I finished the maintenance check on the shock attenuation cylinders. They'll have to be replaced in another 2,000 hours, but we'll face that problem when we come to it. Seska?
Sorry, I wasn't concentrating. What did you say?
You looked a million light years away.
No. Only about 70,000. My brother's birthday's in 4 days. Last year I promised I'd meet him in Nivok, celebrate with him. He'll think I broke my promise, that I'm dead.
Torres returns to her computer console.
What are you doing?
I've been thinking. The folding of space should leave a subspace residue. If we can detect one, we might be a step closer to knowing how the trajector works.
Look at that neutrino dispersion pattern. Could that be a result of the space folding?
Maybe, if the device creates a neutrino bubble around whatever's being trajected.
If that's the case, we need a bubble big enough for the ship. Don't worry, Lieutenant, I'm with you on this one. After all, it doesn't hurt to theorize.
Right. And hypothetically, if we could modify the deflector array to emit phased neutrinos, we could create a big enough bubble.
Let's give it a try. In theory, of course.
Carrie nods and they get to work. Back on Sicaria, Kim, this time in uniform, and Udana return to the plaza on Sicaris at twilight.
I don't understand. Why is it so important that I come here now?
You'll see in a minute.
Kim follows Udana into a dark alleyway in which a man is hiding.
We're here.
Good evening, Ensign. Thank you for coming.
What's this about?
I asked Udana to invite you here because I was sure you would respond to her, and because it would look perfectly natural. I am prepared to accept your collection of literature in exchange for our trajector technology.
Is that something you're authorized to do?
Officially? No. But many people believe that rules should be flexible enough to meet the needs of the moment. There is a great desire here for new stories, and I want to be the one to supply them.
So you'd stand to benefit from this arrangement, right?
We will both benefit. I would gain prestige, and you would gain 40,000 light years in your journey home, possibly more. This is it, Ensign, the matrix of the trajector.
Jarrett gives Kim a device with some connectors at either end.
Captain Janeway has asked the magistrate to send us 40,000 light years.
He won't. He never had any intention of helping you leave here.
Jarrett is right. I know how much it means to you to get home. Please, listen to him.
You must believe me when I tell you this is the only way you will make that journey. Consider my offer. I'm sure you will decide it is a fair one.
Later that evening, up on Voyager, Kim, Paris, Torres, and Seska all sit around a table in the mess hall. Torres has a coffee cup in hand.
I don't know what to do. I know we'd all like to get that much closer to home, but I don't think Captain Janeway is going to go for getting the technology like that.
Maybe she will. After all, it's a Sicarian who's making the offer.
But it's not above board. The captain is only going to deal with an official representative.
Bridge Tenson Kim, the captain can see you now.
Just tell her everything you know. Let her take it from there.
Right.
I'll walk you part way. I'm headed for bed.
Harris and Kim leave, and Torres has a sip of her coffee.
Somehow I have a bad feeling about this. It's just not going to work out.
Don't you think that's up to us?
What does that mean?
It means that we can sit here and let someone make the decision for us, or we can take matters into our own hands. We've been offered the grand prize. All we have to do is step up and claim it.
Take the technology without permission?
Since when do you talk like that? Do you think that permission is more important than getting us halfway home? The captain is so infatuated with that Sicarian magistrate, she can't think straight. We can't trust that she's going to make the best decision for all of us. If we do this, we'll need to use engineering to reconfigure the matrix. It'd be a lot easier if we knew we could count on you.
Seska, I'm a senior officer now. I have responsibilities.
And the main responsibility for everyone on this ship is to try and find a way home. Captain Janeway made that clear from the beginning. That's our primary mission. Just think about it. That's all.
Torres stares pensively into space, thinking about what Seska has just said. And that brings us to the end of Act 3. Angel.
Man, some possible dissent and mutiny breeding on both ends of the Sicarian Voyager interchange. And I think this is a good time to once again remind you of the fact that we are raising money. I want to thank the $40 donation we have gotten for Transgender Law Center during this broadcast. We're making a difference. I want to highlight another program that TLC manages. So, housed at the Transgender Law Center through a 2019 Soros Justice Fellowship, the Disability Project magnifies the leadership, collective power, and visibility of LGBTQ, disabled, deaf, and ill constituents. Led by a multiracial, cross-class, cross-disability advisory board of transgender and gender nonconforming people, the Disability Project embeds disability, deafness, and anti-ableism politics and expertise into LGBTQ movement work. The project breaks isolation, grows connection, and builds leadership within trans, disability, deaf, chronically ill communities. So we have work being performed by TLC that's not just, again, it's this constant intersectional work trying to grow awareness of different areas that are marginalized even within social justice spaces. So that's why it was a fairly uncontroversial choice for us to throw our labor behind supporting TLC and raising money for them. So once again, Tiltify, the link should be somewhere around here. Just somebody will drop it in the chat. If it's not already there, okay, it's somewhere on depending on where you're looking at it, there should be either the Tiltify overlay or there's like a link on the Facebook post. Now let's return it back to Prime Factors for the next act.
Kim is in Janeway's ready room explaining the situation to Janeway and Tuvok. Janeway stands with her hands on her hips.
Did Jared explain what he meant when he said Gath had no intention of helping us?
No, he just made it clear that our only choice was to get the trajector technology from him.
He may simply want us to believe that, so we would deal with him.
Possibly. But somehow I suspect he's right. Thank you for coming to me with this, Ensign. It may muddy the situation somewhat, but it helps me force the issue. Dismissed.
Good night, Captain. Lieutenant.
Kim leaves. Janeway and Tuvok move to the couch and sit down.
Oh, Tuvok, what do I do now?
You would seem to have two options. Continue to negotiate with a man who may have hidden agenda, or deal with a man who is willing to defy his own laws.
Not very pretty choices.
At least if you deal with Jarrett, It is his law that is being compromised, not
But
ours.
does that matter? I told this crew when we started this journey that we'd behave as a Starfleet crew, behaving as Starfleet would expect us to. That means there's a certain standard I have to uphold. Principles, principles. That's what it comes down to. Do I compromise my almighty principles? But how do I not compromise them if it involves a chance to get the crew more than halfway home? How do I tell them my principles are so important that I would deny them that opportunity?
I believe that the first thing you must do is determine whether Gath is willing to use the trajector to help us. If that possibility exists at all, you must explore it.
You're right. Thank you, Tuvok.
Janeway leans across and pats Tuvok's forearm. Later on the Sicarian Plaza, Janeway and Gath walk together between lush planters, the sounds of birdsong in the air.
Have you spoken with the other magistrates about using the trajector?
Actually, I haven't. Some of them are traveling now, but I assure you I will do it.
A merchant interrupts their conversation with another merchant and proffers some goods to Gath and Janeway.
I've already seen all those.
It's becoming a matter of some urgency.
Oh? Why?
We've imposed on you for long enough.
Not true. We welcome you for as long as you can stay, and I hope that's a very long time indeed.
My crew is eager to continue our journey. Once they realize the trajector might bring us 40,000 light years closer to home.
Why are you so consumed with this desire to get home? I find it difficult to understand.
Home is home. It's where we belong.
Couldn't you create a new home here with us? Can you imagine a more delightful place to live where you could pass your time extracting pleasure from every moment? I promise you, you and I have many such moments to explore.
Gath kisses Janeway's hands.
Yes, but for how long? I've seen how quickly you get tired of your pleasures. All that interests you is what's new and unexplored. After a day or two, it becomes commonplace.
Yes?
Gath withdraws from the intimate hand-touching.
We prefer permanence. The reward of relationships that endure and grow deeper with the passing of time.
You would lose those notions if you stayed with us.
You may be right. And that's why we have to leave.
We have offered you nothing but hospitality. Is this how you repay us? With an attack on our beliefs?
I'm sorry. I was just trying to illustrate the differences between us.
I don't enjoy being judged like this. It's very upsetting. Not at all pleasurable.
That's all you really care about, isn't it? Your pleasure. All your hospitality, your graciousness. It was never about giving us pleasure. It's all been to gratify yourselves. We're nothing more than your latest novelty.
You're hostile and vicious. You would infect the joyousness of our lives. You must leave immediately.
You never had any intention of helping us, did you?
Of course I did. I did everything in my power to persuade you to stay here.
Janeway to Voyager. One to beam out.
Gath looks disappointedly onwards as Janeway disappears in a shower of sparkles. Janeway walks onto the bridge from her visit to Sikaris, and Chakotay turns from the console he's operating to talk to her.
Cancel all shore leave and recall the away teams. We've been asked to leave.
Aye, Captain.
Tuvok approaches Janeway, who is leaning against the console Chakotay just left.
I assume that means Gath will not be assisting us.
I don't think he ever had any intention of helping us. He just strung us along.
Are you considering Jarrett's offer?
Oh, I wish I could, but I can't.
Captain, it'll take hours to get everyone up. We've got crew members scattered throughout both hemispheres.
Get them back as quickly as you can, Commander. I think we've overextended our stay here. I'll be in my ready room.
Janeway leaves the bridge, leaving Tuvok alone. It is his turn to stare pensively into the middle distance. Down in the mess hall, Seska, Torres, and Carey talk quietly with each other. Seska has a pile of multicolored isolinear chips.
I've downloaded the Federation library. It's all here in these chips. We know the man to contact. He wants the library and he doesn't care who gives it to him.
They're under orders.
Alana, right now our people are still fighting the Cardassians, dying for our cause. Settlers in the demilitarized zone are still under attack. We made a promise, Balana, that we'd all stick together until the zone was safe. And I intend to keep that promise.
I have a wife and 2 little boys. I don't want them to grow up without a father. I'd do anything to prevent that.
We're not the only ones. Everyone wants to get back. They're just waiting for someone to act.
I've been working on the theory that the trajector operates within a neutrino envelope. If that's true, I think we can use it as many times as we need until we're all the way home.
Just think, by tomorrow we could be there.
Torres struggles for a moment and comes to an uncomfortable decision.
All right, let's do it.
In the transporter room, Torres, Seska, and Carey enter in a hurry.
With shore leave canceled, can we get to the surface undetected?
We'll have to override the security lockout, but that shouldn't be a problem.
It's not accepting my security code.
Reinitialize the lockout buffers.
I did. It's not working. Someone's altered the security subroutine.
Why would anyone do that?
Never mind, beam me down.
Are you crazy? Security will find you out before you get there.
Tuvok enters, carrying a small case.
I altered the security subroutines. Any attempt to override the lockout would have alerted me to your presence here. Is this Voyager's library, which you intended to trade for the trajectory technology?
Yes.
When I attempted to download it, I noticed it had already been accessed.
You were going to download it?
I will make the exchange with Jarrett Hotel. Return to your stations. Do what you can to prepare the ship for the Matrix. Energize.
As Tuvok dematerializes, Seska, Carey, and Torres look at each other in surprise, and we end Act 4. Can't hear you, dude.
Getting thicker. Sorry, audio malfunctions on the bridge here. Once again, as we have been doing on every commercial break, a word from not our sponsor, but I guess the cause that we are sponsoring, Transgender Law Center. Again, we're raising money, Tiltify, look for the link. And as one more update about the work that Transgender Law Center does, I want to tell you about another program that they run called Positively Trans. So this is from their website. Led by trans women of color living with HIV, Positively Trans addresses inequities, stigma, and discrimination nationally and in our local communities through community-driven research, leadership development, and storytelling. We make the case that trans voices, needs, and leadership must be centered in HIV/AIDS response, and that HIV response is a key strategy for trans health and liberation. So that's some more of the kind of policy work that's being done by Transgender Law Center. So that's the kind of thing you are supporting with your donation. Please feel free to chip in whatever you're comfortable donating, because, you know, anything helps. And now with that, let us go back to the next act of Prime Factors.
Janeway walks onto the bridge and Chakotay walks with her to the center chairs.
Mr. Tuvok is on the surface now, Captain. He says the remaining away teams should be on board in 15 minutes.
Are all the food supplies secured?
Aye, Captain. As soon as the last of the crew gets back, we'll be ready to leave.
Bridge to engineering.
Torres here.
We'll be leaving orbit within minutes.
Down in engineering, Torres is casually leaning against the barrier, staring into the warp core.
Ready all propulsion systems.
We're ready now, Captain.
Seska walks up to her as she crosses to the chief engineer's office.
Where's Tuvok?
He'll be here. We certainly won't leave without him.
Well, what's keeping him?
Calm down. You're going to draw attention to yourself.
Tuvok enters and hands over the trajector device.
Do not attempt to activate the device until I've spoken to Captain Janeway.
Tuvok leaves. Seska tries to take the device from Torres and they struggle over it.
What are you doing? He said not to activate it.
I'm not. I'm just going to try the interface simulation. We don't even know if it will interface. We can give ourselves a head start by testing it now.
All right, but just a simulation.
Seska plugs the device into a console and switches it on. Seska, Carey, and Torres are standing around a console in engineering, watching some very pretty graphics.
It's working.
I was right. It operates within a neutrino envelope.
The trajector field is bigger than anything we've created by 10 orders of magnitude.
To get a field that size, you need an amplifier as big as a planet.
I don't understand. How do they get that kind of amplification?
I'll show you. Sakaris has a mantle of tetrahedral quartz 20 kilometers thick. The crystalline structure of the mantle seems to focus and amplify the trajector field.
If that's how the power transfer occurs, then once we leave orbit, we will lose the ability to traject.
We don't have time to test it. We'll have to try it now or forget it.
Do it!
If there are any compatibility problems,
then we can abort. This is our only chance.
Bridge to engineering.
Torres here.
We're ready to leave orbit. Thrusters online.
Aye, Captain.
We have to do something!
On the bridge, Paris is playing his console like a piano.
Mr. Paris, take us out of orbit. 4,000 kph.
Aye, Captain. There's no response. Thrusters are offline.
Janeway to engineering. What's going on, Lieutenant?
We've got a phase variance in plasma conduit 3. I'll have to check it out before we can engage thrusters.
When did this problem show up?
Just now, Captain. It's only a slight variance. I'll have it fixed in a minute.
Keep me advised.
Back in engineering, and the three mutineers are watching a graphical display which looks like soap bubbles expanding in a washing up bowl.
All right, the matrix is activating.
The trajector field is forming.
And it's amplifying. Look how fast it's expanding.
That's the effect of the quartz mantle.
We're nearly at full field strength. This is going to work.
Alarms sound throughout engineering.
What is it?
The plasma manifold is becoming unstable.
I can compensate for that.
The manifold's being bombarded by antineutrinos from the trajector field.
Antineutrinos?
They must be the catalyst for the space folding process.
It's not working. I can't compensate for the instability.
There's no way to compensate for a field that size.
There is a loud boom as steam comes out of the warp core. On the bridge, Harry Kim furiously works his console and reports to the captain.
Captain, I'm showing an unstable plasma manifold. We're heading for breach.
Bridge to Torres. What's happening? We're reading a warp core breach up here.
Down in engineering, the warp core is producing a surprising amount of steam for a device which doesn't include any water.
We're on it, Captain. No time to talk. Shut down the matrix.
I can't. It's not responding.
It's fused.
Plasma temperature at 43 million Kelvin.
Carrie, get everybody out.
All right, people, let's go. Move it out, move out. Let's go. Right now. Let's go. Come on. Move it out fast. Right now. Keep moving.
Torres tries to remove the matrix, but it is still stuck in the hull.
I can't unlock it. The matrix is sealed.
Plasma temperature at 50 million Kelvin.
Torres stands back from the trajector matrix and fires a phaser at the trajector matrix. It explodes in a small cascade of sparks.
Anti-neutrino bombardment has stopped. Plasma temperature dropping.
We didn't anticipate anti-neutrinos. The trajector could never be compatible with Federation technology.
I'll start erasing the sensor logs. We can blame it on the phase discrepancy.
No, we're not going to cover this up.
Are you crazy? We don't have time to take the blame for this.
But we're going to. We disobeyed orders, gambling that it would pay off. It didn't. And now we just can't pretend that nothing happened.
I don't understand. There's no need for this.
I'm sorry if you don't get it, Suska, but it has something to do with being able to live with yourself.
That doesn't sound like you.
If that's true, I take it as a compliment.
Torres is briefing Janeway as Tuvok observes. Janeway is leaning on her desk.
I take full responsibility for what happened. There were others involved, but I was the senior officer and the culpability is mine.
Lieutenant Torres is not precisely correct, Captain. She was not the senior officer involved. I was.
You?
It was I who made the exchange. The Federation Library for the Trajector Matrix.
There is a long pause as Janeway gets a handle on her anger.
I will deal with you in a moment.
Janeway turns to Torres.
I don't have the luxury of throwing you in the brig for the rest of this voyage. I need you. I need every person on this ship. But I want you to know how very deeply you have disappointed me. If there are any further transgressions, even a minor one, you will no longer be an officer on this crew. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Dismissed.
Torres leaves. Janeway turns her ire to Tuvok.
I don't even know where to start. I want you to explain to me how you, of all people, could be involved in this.
It is quite simple, Captain. You have made it clear on many occasions that your highest goal for the crew is to get them home. But in this instance, your standards would not allow you to violate Sicarian law. Someone had to spare you the ethical dilemma. I was the logical choice, and so I chose to act.
You did it for me because you knew I couldn't.
I accept the consequences of my actions. I expect to lose my commission and to be court-martialed when we return to Federation space.
You are one of my most valued officers, and you are my friend. It is vital that you understand me here. I need you, but I also need you to know, I need to know that I can count on you. You are my counsel, the one I turn to when I need my moral compass checked. We have forged this relationship for years, and I depend on it. I realize you made a sacrifice for me, but it's not one that I would have allowed you to make. You can use logic to justify almost anything. That's its power and its flaw. From now on, bring your logic to me. Don't act on it behind my back.
You have my word. My logic was not in error, but I was.
Dismissed.
And with a final moment of a character staring despairingly into the middle distance, we come to the end of the episode.
And that was Prime Factors. We are going to roll the credits and then stick around. We will have our post-show discussion.
All right.
Come back to Dramatis Personae. Before we engage in our discussion of the episode with our repertory players, I want to thank the fact that we got 2 anonymous $20 donations to Transgender Law Center during the course of our episode. Thank you so much. It really, it really is just about, it's really just about energizing, for lack of a better word, pun not intended, activating energy where it is, because I'm involved in a lot of hyperlocal neighborhood organizing, and I know that it's not always just about like raising large amounts of money, but just doing the outreach to the people who are willing to participate and to donate. So that's why we, even if it's just a little rinky-dink Mickey Mouse internet show, it's just good to sort of couple that with some kind of activation, because chances are somebody who watched this show is not aware was not aware of Transgender Law Center, and now they are. So before actually we get into the discussion, I think there are a couple of things that we need to congratulate for our repertory cast. In fact, immediately, if you notice the very, very palpable chemistry and romantic tension between our actors playing Gath and Janeway, it's because Bex and JB, immediately preceding the recording of this episode, were married. Congratulations, Bex and JB.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dramatis Personae, where couples decide to spend their honeymoon. Also, additionally, our pilot, Tom Paris, Noah, just got ordained as a deacon in the Episcopal Church. How cool is that? So we've all officially adopted him as our father daddy. So stick around. At the end of the discussion, actually, we're going to reveal what the next episode of Dramatis Personae will be. But I want to just jump into Prime Factors. I actually wanted to sort of talk to Bex first, as Janeway is very much at the center of the conflict here, because as she says, this is the first time she's had to deal with being on the other side of another culture's equivalent of the Prime Directive. And this episode is in general just meant to sort of provoke a critique of the idea of the Prime Directive. what you as Bex, what is your stance on something like the Prime Directive, and how does that compare to Janeway's actions in this episode?
I tend to follow rules pretty strictly, so I could see if I were in her shoes, I would just go by the book, not press the issue for getting technology from this other culture. But I don't know. She's got to go home, and it's her fault that she's stuck out there in the Delta Quadrant. So it's interesting how that storyline is really wrapped up in this flirty relationship with Gath, and she's like, "Oh, I might be able to give you something you want," and he's like, "Oh yeah," and it's not that; it's just a bunch of books.
Yeah. So speaking of Gath, JB, to me, Gath is kind of a very is a little bit of a more sophisticated version of a villain trope we see in TOS a lot, which is like the hedonist with a power advantage over the Starfleet crew that like wants to treat them more like pets or toys. Yeah. What's your interpretation of Gath's motivations and actions in this episode as you interpreted them?
I see. I kind of see it as a classic Midwestern American versus continental European clash of cultures. Where, I mean, Janeway even says, well, you just get tired of your pleasures immediately and then throw them away. And he's like, yes. So he's like, and? So I don't know. I think, you can't really fault Gath for holding back the technology, because he really doesn't know what they just met these aliens. They don't know what the consequences of giving them such a powerful propulsion devices. So, but I think where Gath gets slimy is his deceit, is that he strings Janeway and the Voyager crew along because he wants to just be amused by them for a little bit longer. So he instead of sticking to his firm no, he kind of allows it to be, oh, really, books, literature, really, tell me more. So, but really, it's all bullshit.
It is kind of interesting how, especially in some of the later Treks, and I'm even seeing it a little bit as I'm trying to rewatch more of Enterprise, despite the pain that I experienced last week, that oftentimes, the people who sort of are holding that, technological leverage over another culture and sort of withhold it for fear of contaminating that culture also tend to have a little bit of a paternalistic, sort of condescending attitude to that culture. In Enterprise, it's manifested very much with like the way the Vulcans treat the humans, and we're sort of meant to sympathize with the human frustration here. So I kind of wanted to, oh, by the way, also we will take questions from anybody watching in the chat, and we'll have somebody pick some out if we want to take a moment to discuss those. But David, you kind of raised an interesting comment on that in the chat. So I want you to go ahead and elaborate, talk about what you were thinking, how it applies to the modern context.
So this idea of having a technological advantage is very much the basis of the patent system and the way in which we do technological innovation and competition. If you remember I'm sure you remember this, Angel, you just look young, but back in the 1960s when there was the space race and we had the Russians and the Americans rushing to get to space, with the irony, of course, that the Americans then declared victory, having done one thing before the Russians. We had this situation where there was a lot of secrecy and a lot of espionage about getting hold of those scientific secrets that would put humans on the moon. And we see it today in the way, particularly American, but not exclusively American, geopolitics works with regards to China, for example, or should I say China. You know, the way the entire competition between Trump and China at the moment, his entire antipathy towards it, I would argue is based on this entire idea of having secrets and not giving it to people so they can't advantage.
Yeah, there is. There's often a, you know, there's a thread. There's sort of a perennial question in the area of left-winged analysis of Star Trek, which is, you know, is the Federation imperialist or colonialist in nature? And I think a lot of that premise that they are hinges on the mentality of the Prime Directive, and like this idea that sometimes non-interference, you know, as an unnuanced program of non-interference can sometimes also be, you know, used to reinforce, you know, colonialist and imperialist hierarchies. I wanted to see if anybody else had a comment on that topic. Whoever wants to go.
I mean, I think effectively the problem is that you've got a one-size-fits-all approach to solving the problem.
Yeah.
And the second you say everything is black or everything is white, you ignore all of the shades of grey which sit in between. And I think that actually is one of the difficult things about living in the 21st century. We are in the 21st century. It's not the 22nd, right? Yeah, it's 21st. And we are very much used to thinking about simple systems where it's really obvious that A causes B, and if we put something in between them, then we can stop A causing B. But we don't live in that society anymore. We don't even live in a complicated society where there's lots of A's and B's and we can interrupt one of them and eventually we'll work out how to stop C from happening. We live in a society where the causes and effects don't appear related to each other, and there's like an exponential gap between the cause and the effect, and trying to second guess the system is nigh on impossible. And to try and apply a simple solution to a complex scenario is inviting failure, because what it does is ignores the reality of the situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Max, I noticed you were particularly provoked by David's comments. So what's on your mind?
Oh, I think that's a great way of putting it. The Prime Directive is it assumes that answers and problems are going to be very, very simple, and it's going to be you know, black and white, yes, no kind of thing. It's going to be really straightforward, and that's not reality. And that's where when they apply it, where we see it applied the most in Star Trek is where it is actually the least helpful. It only ever comes up when there's an actually complex problem, and instead of trying to figure out, you know, all of the layers and how best to approach it in ways that are still you know, respectful of the cultures that they've run into and respectful of the beings that they've run into, instead they go, no, Prime Directive can't do anything, and then that's it.
It's
so
like a cop out.
Exactly. Yeah, it gets applied. It's just like, this is too hard. I don't want to.
But there are instances where, and they even mention this in Prime Factors, there are instances where they do break it. And in Voyager, they break it by giving the Hirogen holographic technology. But then later in the series, you see that the holograms have like kind of formed their own like resistance against being treated badly.
Yeah, there's always
remembering
like,
that correctly. Yeah.
There's always that like, oh, you broke the Prime Directive, therefore you're the bad guy now. Like, it's still very black and white.
You know, I was just thinking about how so like the rubric for the Prime Directive usually though is like once a culture develops warp drive, then it's like, okay, fine, we can, you know, do all the exchange we want. And it's a very guns, germs, and steel kind of mentality to make technology the bellwether for cultural development.
Right.
I just wanted to see what people thought about that in relationship to, you know, how from that perspective, that it's hard to not say that the Prime Directive is very colonialist.
Can I actually have something I'd like to share on that.
Absolutely. Our wonderful producer, Carl.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to Google while I'm trying to form a sentence here. But one of my favorite like female sci-fi authors, whose name is escaping me at the moment, has this essay she wrote about I think it's called The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction. It's fantastic, and it's a must-read for everybody, especially people interested in sci-fi. But basically, it's kind of like her premise is that we have always defined the start of civilization as, you know, when a man picked up a tool, right? Like you think about 2001: A Space Odyssey, you know, the moment of evolutionary whatever happens when these apes figure out that they can kill each other. So, you know, there's this throughout history, it's always been the story of the big man, the man who leaves the tribe, kills the woolly mammoth, and brings back the meat. And, you know, we've always thought about various forms of technology, tools, weapons, language, as a bellwether for culture. But in this essay, and it's not Octavia Butler. I'm struggling to remember who it is. Anyway,
Max
is it Ursula K. Le Guin?
Ursula K. Le Guin. Thank you so much. Le Guin,
author of the Earthsea, Tales of Earthsea series. Wonderful. Just like if you want like really like unabashed, you know, anarchist feminist science fiction, Ursula K. Le Guin is kind of, you know, the one-stop shop there.
And so her alternative take is that no, it's not about the hero, like the strong man leaving the tribe. It's about the women who went out and gathered seeds and plants, just gathered whatever they could find and took those things back to, you know, to the tribe to see what they did, to find their medicinal properties, their nutritional properties. And so, you know, because it was really the birth of agriculture that really set humans apart from, you know, our forebears. And so her counter to the strongman theory of fiction is this carrier bag theory, in which it's kind of about collecting things from all over the place. And in that way, like, there is something about the Sicosians. Is that the name?
Sicarians.
Sicarians. There is something about the Sicarians that does have this kind of approach, right? Like, they just aggregate all these different cultural properties and sort of just enrich their own lives with it. So that was, I know that's a very long-winded answer, but I wanted to jump in on that because that question of what makes a society and what makes it like an advanced society is a really important one, especially in Star Trek.
Can I just add to that and say the oldest piece of technology we've found in archaeology is actually a rib from an animal which is marked with 28 notches, almost certainly used by a woman to keep track for, I have no idea what, I'm sure a woman can explain it to me. But yeah, very, very clearly not a big man doing technology the first time around.
Steph, you know, our lovely musician this evening, I always like hearing from you. What's on your mind during this discussion?
So I mean, I played Tuvok, and it's a really interesting episode for him. And I think the thing that's interesting here is, so at this point in the franchise, we hadn't actually seen a Vulcan as a main character since Spock in TOS.
And never a full-blooded Vulcan.
No.
Right.
I mean, and through Tuvok, we got quite good opportunities to kind of expand the lore on what it meant to be a Vulcan. And there's that really interesting exchange at the end where Janeway says, logic could be used to justify anything, that's its power, that's its flaw. And like therein we have a critique of the entire Vulcan ethos, you know, which, you know, wasn't, I mean, TOS kind of dealt with, you know, Bones and Spock kind of butting heads over logic, but very often it was more on a sort of level of, you know, oh, it's fun to act logically, or sometimes trusting your gut is the best way forward. But you know, I feel this what Janeway does here is a much more sort of nuanced take on it. And it's actually really interesting that if we look at other Vulcans throughout the franchise, we're actually, for all their devotion to logic, we're always seeing Vulcans act in quite extreme ways. So, like, we have Cybok, who's a cult leader. We have the logic extremists. We have a serial killer in DS9. And I think that's a lot of that could be explained by, like, if Vulcans are putting logic on a pedestal, whatever their prejudice, sort of innate prejudice, well, not innate, but like whatever their kind of unquestioned prejudices are, if they think that they're logical, they will believe in them, you know, to a fanatical extent. And there's a really kind of interesting parallel with the sort of political landscape today with new atheists who are more or less synonymous with the alt-right. And, you know, you get these people who, you know, because they've read some Richard Dawkins or some Sam Harris, and they think, oh, I'm a rationalist now, you know, everything I do and say is from a completely rational perspective. And then they think that justifies all of their bigotry and their white supremacy and their misogyny. You know?
And you get Tuvok replying to Janeway by saying, my logic was not in error, but I was.
Yeah.
And so it's important. And so Tuvok kind of recognizes that he's not infallible. And I wish more of our, you know, logic extremist people in the real world would be that way.
It is interesting. I want to note, it's interesting that it's the Vulcan who sort of facilitates the breaking of the Prime Directive, when, like, the whole idea of the Prime Directive is sort of modeled on, like, a rule that the Vulcans had. That's especially then, you know, further illustrated on in Enterprise. Sorry, David, actually, you wanted to ask me a question?
Yeah, so the Sicarians were originally proposed by the writers of season 1 to be the third big bads that Voyager faced through their trip.
And the other two being the Kazons and the who?
The Vidians.
The Vidians.
The guys with the phage. So, as a writer, how would you anticipate the Sicarians turning into the bad guys? What sort of stories do you think we might have seen?
Oh, that's a good question, and that's true. I as a writer, that is it. So, yeah, I think the challenge with having Sicarians as a recurring villain is, like, it would have to, like, in my head, you know, because we find that the Sicarians are very centered around, like, you know, hedonistic, sybaritic pleasure, as well as having, you know, the technology. I would think that what would make sense as a story to develop from there would be, like, Gath sort of developing a single-minded, lustful need to acquire Voyager and like make them part of his collection, sort of like I just watched this Next Generation episode where there's the collector who acquires data and tries to say that again.
The Most Toys is the episode.
The Most Toys. The problem is that then, like, when you have a villain whose main, you know, motivation is capture the good guy, then they might just become like Team Rocket, and it's just like, you know, there's only so many ways you can foil that plot.
Yeah,
that's a Pokemon reference for anybody who doesn't know that cartoon.
Got to catch it all, as the advert for the sexual health clinic said. Just to sort of echo that slightly, I agree. I do wonder if Gath would have turned into sort of Trump-like character who has this narcissistic passion for self-pleasure. And the second that's threatened, he becomes quite vicious and repulsive.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if it would sort of turn into a sort of a Trump-like dynamic. I mean,
Actually, you just made me hit on something that JB, your performance as Gath reminded me a lot of another recurring character who's sort of an antagonist but not a villain on another sci-fi show, and that's Zap Brannigan on Futurama. And so I guess that's like, I feel like Gath would become sort of a Zap Brannigan type, who's like sort of an anti-hero who mostly gets in the way, but is very like personally obsessed with Janeway. That's probably how I would make the Sicarians fit in if they were going to be a recurring character in Voyager.
Cool. Thank you very much for that. So it's just nice to ask your questions.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions from the chat from any of our viewers? Not yet. Cool.
Well, viewers, was that boring?
But so let's see. Noah. I haven't heard. Actually, yeah, I haven't heard. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Lita, playing you, Donna. You have a very central role in this. What's your thoughts about Lita's motivation and role in the events of all of this?
Everybody likes new things, and I feel like it's like the Sakaar thing is, it's new, it's shiny, I want to have it. And I think a lot of time for them, it seems that turns into physical expression. Like she just gets excited. He's done a thing and told her about it. Like she asks consent to share his story, which is pretty cool. But this whole sensation of kind of absorbing other people's stuff, I don't like they really are defined in themselves.
Yeah.
Like they're defined by what they can take from people they encounter. And
Yeah,
creepy.
Yeah. So here's a question that I have for you as playing one of the Sicarian characters, is that like one of the constant fears often presented in science fiction is that an increasingly technologized society would make us, sort of disembodied, like separated from bodily sensory pleasures. But here we have the Sicarians as not only a technologically superior race, but also, again, like I said, very sybaritic and all about the physical pleasures. What do you think? What strikes you about the Sicarians? What is it that you think might be specific to the Sicarians that might have prevented that sort of disembodiment of their, in the face of their increasing technological innovation?
I also think, because that's a really interesting question, I've brained for a minute. It almost seems that they've gone past that point. They've had the technology so long that it's not exciting anymore. And they're kind of full circle back to needing pertinent tactile interaction with things and other people. As opposed to the technology completely kind of, this chat is blown up and I know I miss so many things right now. But yeah, I kind of think they might have just had it so long that it's old now. And they're kind of back to the stuff and touch sort of mentality.
So you think maybe it's sort of like a return to the roots kind of thing, what's old is new again?
I mean,
my God, are the Sicarians techno hipsters?
Well,
be a thing.
Is that what we're seeing at the moment? You see, if we've got this novelty-seeking cycle, and we suddenly have this resurgent hipsterism with a return to artisan. God, I hate that word. Artisan.
Vinyl.
Yeah, exactly. Is that actually a form of cultural narcissism seeking to maximize the pleasure through some kind of culturally acceptable, conspicuous consumption? I just throw it out there.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, so Gath says that, well, so Janeway accuses him of, only caring about his own pleasure, but he claims in response that he tried to help her by convincing her to stay, but he's not respecting what she wants there. He's just doing what he would want best for himself, what would give him pleasure. He's not considering her perspective there. So
I feel
maybe
like-
that's like a cultural issue they have going on.
I think he does that throughout, like the whole
Yeah.
way that he touches her and stuff like that. It's creepy and it's very much self-gratifying. It's nothing to do with giving her pleasure or looking after her. It's just he's just completely out for himself.
Mm-hmm.
Also, who sends a distress call because the other person they've made a determination that the other person is distressed because they're not having enough fun or something.
Right.
But yeah,
They're
it's very,
imposing.
it's paternalistic.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I think that he's coming from a place where he figured out very early that Voyager is technologically inferior. So he feels like they're sort of his, he's going to lead them into some sort of enlightened path of, life where he will open all their eyes to pleasure and the wonders of technology as long as he gets
As
to
long
control it.
as they don't get to use it to leave, because that would give them displeasure.
See, but that shows how like the technology differential inherently creates hierarchical relations of power.
Yep.
So that's why like something like the Prime Directive that specifically prevents a more equal distribution of technological power is inherently hierarchical and one can say colonialist in that way. I want to give a shout out to our Lael in the chat who commented that responding to come-ons by offering people books is big ace energy. Robbie, I wanted to hear from you a little bit because
That's not a hell of a segue, Angel.
unintentional.
Thinking of someone who doesn't have sex.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I don't know what your role. Well, so it's leading into a general question. Voyager is very much like, especially compared to Deep Space Nine, is kind of a less sensual show as far as like the behavior of a lot of the crew. Like, what are your views on like how the Voyager character, speaking as a fan, like the relationship that the Voyager characters have to like romance and sex compared to other Star Trek shows?
Are you asking me specifically or the group?
I'm asking that question to you because you haven't talked a lot during this discussion, and I like everybody to be included and participate.
Well, I'll just begin by saying it's been a long pandemic, y'all. I mean, so the energy on Voyager is so different from a place like Deep Space Nine or even the Enterprise on Next Gen, because it's this little self-contained unit. So the crew doesn't have the advantage of a crew sort of changeover happening on a regular basis, and so like if you try and make something happen with someone, either romantically or just sexually, and it backfires, like there's how many people on Voyager? 120 or 130? Like, you're going to run into that person in the mess hall every other day. And I feel like that, I mean, depending on your personality, is probably a reason enough to not attempt anything. At least not anything
doesn't
like
stop a few DSA chapters, I'm aware.
Well,
Hey-o!
fair enough.
Anyway,
That doesn't stop the Delaney sisters, apparently.
Wow. Yeah. But it would have been it would have been more interesting to see those kinds of things play out, because what happens to so many characters on Voyager who aren't the principal cast, they just disappear after a while. So the Delaney sisters are in the background for a lot of the first season, and then they just sort of vanish because I guess
honestly can't remember if we ever see them.
We
They're
do.
talked about.
They participate in Tom
they are,
Paris's
okay.
Flash Gordon type
Oh,
program.
that's right.
once.
Yeah,
And it turns out, of course, they're identical twins.
Right. Yeah. And like this sort of leads to just sort of this background or secondary character as utility. We were talking earlier about Carrie's character, who shows up as this secondary supporting character a lot during the first couple of seasons, and then he sort of disappears. And I think sometime in season 6 or 7, the writers thought they had killed him off and realized that they hadn't, that they just forgot to keep using him. And so they're like, let's bring Carrie back. so we could kill them off, which they did. Anyways,
Really
we got a little
Carrie.
off topic. Yeah.
I actually really like Carrie as a character because so like the first couple episodes of the entire series, they're trying to merge the Voyager crew with the Maquis crew, and Carrie is the Starfleet officer who's up for becoming the new chief engineer, but Janeway decides to give that to B'Elanna instead. And Carrie's upset about it at first, but he gets over it pretty quickly, and he respects her authority, and they work really well together on a regular basis, including in this episode. And it's really nice to just see an example of a man letting a woman take charge and just being fine with it, instead of it being like a constant dramatic tension thing.
Hell yeah. All right, well, we've been going for about 40 minutes, so I want to wrap it up a little bit here. First, a couple of things. First, I want to announce what the next episode of Dramatis Personae will be in 2 weeks. And we are going back to Deep Space Nine, and we are covering The Forsaken. Now that with that announcement out of the way, I want to stick around after I give everybody the final thanks and sign off, because our wonderful producer Carl has a trailer for something that he's working on that he wants to show you. Please stick around for that. But just so final wrap up things. Please, thank you to everybody who's donated so far to Transgender Law Center. Please, if you haven't yet, or if you're watching the recording of this, you're not watching it live, we're still going to have that going, so it's never too late. Let's see, just want to give one final shout out to our lovely cast who also participated in the discussion. We've got me, Angel Castillo, Casey Lowry, Paul Bloomer, Maxim Rex, Noah Stansbury, Bex Flat, Steffi, Kirsten Johnson, JB Flat, Robbie Lawton, Lita Chrisman, Randall C. Brown, David X. Crow doing the narrations, and then also we've got Carl St. Lucie as our producer and director and fearless leader. Please come back in 2 weeks for The Forsaken, and now we throw it to Carl's trailer. Live long and prosper, everybody.